There are whispers that thread through the void, faint, almost inaudible murmurs that slip between the static of the warp and the coded vox signals of 1,000 dying worlds. Some say they are echoes of prophecy. Others claim them to be lies spun by beings who remember when stars were young. The Eldar, those remnants of an empire older than the Imperium itself, move unseen across the skein of time, weaving and cutting destinies with a precision no human mind can follow. To the Astra Militarum, they are ghosts, beautiful, terrible, and fleeting. To the Inquisition, they are manipulators whose truths are half poison, half revelation. Yet to the few who have looked into an Eldar's eyes and survived, the truth is more terrifying still. The Eldar do not merely see the future, they shape it, and in their long defeat they have bound humanity's destiny to their own. So this is not a tale of battles or banners, but of strings pulled in shadow, of subtle hands guiding mankind through its own madness, steering it toward survival, or perhaps toward annihilation, in the name of a fate only the Eldar can read. It began not with a war, but with a whisper. The records of the Adeptus Administratum would later mark it as a skirmish, a nameless conflict on the borders of a forgotten subsector. But to those who were there, it was an encounter with something beyond comprehension. The men of the 23rd Vostroyan Regiment had marched across the ash dunes of Carthos IV for weeks, expecting orc raiders or cultist insurgents. What they found instead were shapes that shimmered like the memory of glass, figures moving with impossible grace amid the smoke of burnt promethium. The first shots fired were instinct, not strategy. The first casualties fell before the enemy had even been seen. Sergeant Yerevan remembered the sound before he remembered the faces, a keen, sharp as broken crystal, cutting through the thunder of last fire. When the light faded, his platoon was gone. In their place stood beings tall and slender, armored in lacquered plates that gleamed like the bones of stars. They spoke without words, their gestures weaving through the air as though commanding the wind itself. When Yerevan raised his weapon again, something inside him faltered. The thing before him was not an enemy in any sense he could understand. It was a reflection of something purer, older, and utterly indifferent. In that instant, the Eldar looked upon Mon, and Mon looked upon the Eldar. Both saw ghosts. Later, the Magos biologists assigned to the aftermath would find no trace of the enemy's dead. No footprints in the dust, no shell casings, no energy residue consistent with known Xenos weaponry. Yet there were patterns burned into the sand. Arcs of fused glass spiraling outward from the center of the engagement zone, like some celestial script. The Mechanicus would call it plasma distortion. The Inquisition would call it heresy. But those who had survived the day called it something else, a warning. The first lesson humanity learned of the Eldar was that they do not fight for territory. They fight for moments, for fractions of possibility. Each skirmish, each strange withdrawal, was not an act of cowardice or mercy, but calculation. Every engagement was a stitch in a vast, unseen tapestry. To the Imperium, their actions were inexplicable. To the Eldar, they were inevitability itself. In the long centuries that followed, fragments of that encounter spread like rumor through the ranks of Imperial commanders. Some dismissed them as myths. Others, like Lord Militant Carthvoran, built entire strategies around them. He once remarked, before vanishing with his entire fleet into a region now marked Exterminatus, that the Eldar do not wage war, they curate it. Those words, perhaps more than any others, capture the truth of that fractured mirror, for in the Eldar's manipulation of humanity, there is an artistry to their cruelty. They do not crush empires, they sculpt them, shaping the fall so it arrives precisely when it must. There are accounts, buried deep in the sealed archives of Terra, of the first sanctioned attempts at communication between Eldar and human envoys. These were not diplomatic exchanges, but interrogations, desperate efforts to understand the motives of a race that appeared everywhere and nowhere, saving Imperial worlds one decade and annihilating them the next. The interrogators reported that the Eldar spoke of balance and the skein, of threads that must not fray. To the uninitiated, these were riddles. To the few psychers permitted to witness the encounters, they were glimpses into something vaster than prophecy. One such report, attributed to Inquisitor Kalian Voss of the Ordo Xenos, remains partially intact. "They move as if the universe were already written," Voss wrote, "and they, its editors. Humanity is but a sentence in their script. To question them is to question grammar itself." He was later declared hereticus and executed by his peers, yet his words survive, passed in whispers among those who have seen the same pattern. Worlds spared not through Imperial valor, but through Eldar intervention that came without explanation or request. To understand how the Eldar manipulate humanity, one must first accept that manipulation is their language. They do not coerce or command, they guide, often through the illusion of randomness. An Imperial victory here, a mysterious withdrawal there, a supply convoy delayed by what appears to be administrative error. Each of these, in their own time, becomes a note in the Eldar's symphony of survival. They understand the human machine better than humanity does itself. It is said that when a Farseer closes their eyes, they can see the skein of fate stretching across eternity, a billion possible futures twisting like strands of living light. To pluck one is to kill a world. To preserve another is to doom a species. Yet to the Eldar this is not cruelty, it is necessity. Their empire burned because they lost control of their own desires. Now they seek to ensure that no other species, not even humanity, repeats that cosmic sin unchecked, and so they play their game with exquisite care, each move a paradox of mercy and manipulation. Humanity's wars become their theater, humanity's heroes their actors. The Imperium fights to survive. The Eldar fight to make that survival meaningful, if only so that the greater darkness can be postponed. The irony, of course, is that humanity does not notice. To the High Lords of Terra, every triumph is divine will. Every improbable survival, a sign of the Emperor's favor. The Eldar do not correct them. They let the Imperium believe in miracles, because faith is the perfect camouflage. In a galaxy where truth is heresy, the Eldar's greatest weapon is silence. On the broken surface of Carthos Fear, the last Vostroyan to die left a single line etched into the hull of his tank, scrawled in blood and soot. "They wanted us to win." Centuries later, when the Mechanicus unearthed the wreck, the inscription was still legible. They filed it as a curiosity, another unsolved anomaly in a universe built of them. But to those who understand the pattern, it was not a curiosity at all. It was confirmation. The Eldar had chosen that battlefield. They had chosen who would live and who would die. And through it all, humanity believed it was acting on its own will. It is difficult to say when the Imperium first realized that its victories had been borrowed. For most, the thought was heretical, that the hand of an alien species could have steered Imperial destiny. Yet, for every planet reclaimed, every heretic purged, and every daemon banished at the last possible moment, there lingered traces of something other. Vox transmissions that came before no warning could have been possible. Navigators reporting impossible warp calms along routes that should have torn ships apart. And at the heart of it all, phantom signatures. Unlogged vessels glimpsed at the periphery of Auspex scans, vanishing before identification. At first, such reports were dismissed as machine error or warp interference. But those who studied the pattern, the Inquisitors who looked too deeply, the savants who connected dots across centuries, began to see it for what it was. A design, not a grand conspiracy, not even a consistent agenda, but something like a pulse, the heartbeat of a dying race that still sought to shape the rhythm of time. The Eldar, for all their coldness, were never random. Among the most haunting testimonies comes from the private journals of Lord Inquisitor Dathus Verana, who commanded the Purity Crusades along the eastern fringe. His fleet was beset by an unending tide of orc warbands, their numbers swelling faster than extermination could thin them. Yet one night, as Varane's flagship, the Cynosure, drifted amid the wreckage of the 7th engagement, a transmission arrived, not through Vox or data slate, but burned directly into the ship's logic engines as if the machine spirit itself had been branded. It contained only a single phrase, rendered in low Gothic by means no mortal could explain: "Strike the third moon before the storm." Varen obeyed, whether by instinct or faith, none could later say. The third moon of that nameless system was destroyed, detonated by cyclonic torpedoes. From its remains, a warp rift erupted, vast enough to consume the orc fleet in an instant. When the storm closed, the void was silent. Victory was absolute. The Mechanicus deemed the event impossible. The Ordo Hereticus demanded explanation. Varen simply wrote, "They saved us, or themselves. I no longer know the difference." He vanished a year later, presumed dead. His fleet's last known course was toward the web-snarled reaches near the maiden worlds of Eonden. Such accounts exist by the dozen. Imperial triumphs that align perfectly with Eldar presence, though never openly acknowledged. Some scholars, within the forbidden chambers of the Scholastica Sicana, suggest that these patterns are not coincidence but conversation. The Eldar, unable to speak to humanity without invoking suspicion or violence, instead speak through events. Each manipulated outcome a syllable in a language of cause and consequence. A fleet guided to safety here, a planet doomed there, a psyker's vision steered toward madness or revelation. All parts of a dialogue too complex to be recognized as communication at all. There are those who claim that even the rise of certain heroes, the kind who turn the tide of wars they should never have survived, bears the touch of Eldar design. Names are whispered only in shadows. Saint Celestine, who returned from death's embrace as if guided by unseen hands. Lord Solar Macarius, whose campaigns followed paths eerily parallel to ancient Eldari migration lines. And the Primarchs themselves, whose return and fall have always seemed less like destiny and more like choreography. Of course, such speculation is death. To suggest that the Eldar could see so far, could shape so deeply, is to invite the attention of the Inquisition, or worse, to be proven correct. Still, those who have looked into the eyes of a Farseer understand what it means to be seen not as an individual, but as a variable in an equation older than Terra. To them, every human act, every rebellion, every prayer, is another thread in a tapestry woven toward a single purpose. Whether that purpose is mercy or malice depends on which path preserves the Eldar for one more generation. And so, they whisper into humanity's wars as gods might into dreams, steering empires with the lightest of touches. On the world of Caudus Prime, the 8th Armageddon Steel Legion once fought an enemy they could not name. The sky itself turned to shards of color, the air humming with energies that broke Auspex readings. As the regiments braced for annihilation, the phenomenon ceased, leaving behind only the faint silhouette of a figure watching from a ridge, its armor white and gold, its helm crowned with an emerald plume. Then it was gone. Hours later, an orbital bombardment fell upon the enemy's position, guided by coordinates no one had transmitted. Those who survived swore they heard laughter in the wind, not mocking, but weary. The Administratum, in its way, has learned to erase such stories. Records are redacted, eyewitnesses reassigned or silenced, and the machine of imperial history grinds forward as though none of it ever happened. Yet these gaps are where the truth lives. Between the lines of official doctrine, within the pauses of prayer, there is a pattern of intervention so deliberate that it could not have been coincidence. The Eldar do not seek gratitude, they seek outcomes. Humanity, in their eyes, is not an ally nor an enemy, but a pivot point, a race that can either stabilize the galaxy long enough for Eldar survival or collapse it beyond all hope of renewal. Somewhere in the void, amid the shattered remains of Carthos IV, the reflection still waits. The Eldar's presence lingers there like a scent that never fades, a reminder that even the smallest human victory may have been gifted or purchased by hands unseen. The fractured mirror endures because neither side can look away. The Eldar see in humanity the echo of what they were, proud, reckless, ablaze with the certainty of purpose. Humanity, though blind to its manipulation, feels the faint tug of something ancient in its bones, a destiny that is not its own, yet cannot be escaped. And so, the mirror cracks a little more with every century, reflecting two species doomed to repeat each other's mistakes, bound by a prophecy neither fully understands. In the shadowed vaults of the Conclave of Terra, there exists a sealed data fragment known only as Codex Vethrin. Its pages are written in overlapping tongues, High Gothic, Eldari glyph, and machine script, as if multiple realities had bled together during its transcription. Few are permitted to read it. Fewer still can endure what it reveals. Within those corrupted lines lies a theory whispered among the more heretical scholars of the Ordo Xenos, that humanity's ascension was not only foreseen by the Eldar, but engineered in fragments, nudged from the periphery across millennia of subtle interference. It speaks of lost colony fleets spared by unseen forces, of rogue psychers mysteriously guided to safety, of technologies appearing centuries ahead of imperial capability, always near Eldar ruins, always buried beneath myth. The text claims, though never conclusively, that the Eldar manipulated not only battles but bloodlines, ensuring that certain human minds survived and propagated while others vanished in war and disease. It reads as madness, and perhaps it is, but even madness carries pattern. In those rare moments when an Eldar emissary allows an Inquisitor audience, beneath the watch of custodian guard and the unblinking gaze of servitors, the exchange is not of demands, but riddles. The Eldar do not threaten, they warn. They speak of storms that will come not in fire or steel, but in the unraveling of thought itself, of the warp swelling beyond containment, of humanity's faith collapsing under the weight of its contradictions. They never ask for alliance. They merely say, "We have seen what happens if you do not endure." It is this phrase, repeated across countless intercepted transmissions and psychic impressions, that most unsettles the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. If you do not endure, not we, not all, but you. As if the survival of humanity is an equation whose result determines something far beyond the Imperium's scope. The Eldar fear extinction, but what they fear more is the silence that follows, a silence that even their farseers cannot pierce. For all their arrogance, there is something desperate in their actions, a frantic devotion hidden beneath elegance. The manipulation of humanity is not cruelty for its own sake. It is a defense against the dark that consumed them once before. The Eldar play the game of gods because they have no gods left to answer them, save for one who laughs and another who hungers. Humanity, in its blind faith, has become both shield and scapegoat, an unwitting instrument in a cosmic redemption no one asked for. The Imperial Creed teaches that all Xenos are lies given form, that mercy toward them is treason. But there are records, ancient even before the heresy, suggesting that the Emperor himself, in the early days of his crusade, encountered Eldar seers. The accounts vary. Some say they spoke to him as equals. Others say they fled, unable to bear his light. And there are those, buried deepest in the vaults of the Sigillites' forbidden archives, that claim the Emperor listened, that he allowed their counsel briefly, before severing the connection forever. The details are speculation, yet one thing remains. Since that age, humanity and Eldar have walked paths that cross like blades, each wound binding them closer. On countless battlefields, from the shattered domes of Cadia to the ruins of Belial Fury, stories repeat the same pattern. When all hope seems lost, when the Emperor's name has been screamed to exhaustion, something happens. A sudden breach in the enemy line, a pulse through the warp. A vision in the corner of a psyker's mind, showing precisely where to strike, whom to spare, when to retreat. And always afterward, there are traces. Shards of wraithbone buried in the mud, a rune scorched into the hull of a ruined chimera, the echo of a voice that was never human. There are those who choose to see coincidence, others fate. But for those who have witnessed it firsthand, the feeling is unmistakable, as if an invisible hand had tilted the scale at the very moment of annihilation. A hand ancient, sorrowful, and utterly detached from gratitude. It is said that farseers who walk too long within the skein begin to lose their sense of time, speaking of events yet to come as though they have already passed. Among their own kind, there are whispers of human worlds that must survive, worlds whose names are never spoken aloud, only painted into the air with light no mortal eye can see. These worlds are not chosen for their strength, nor for their loyalty, but because somewhere in their future lies a convergence, a point where Eldar and Man will either perish together or transcend their mutual ruin. Of course, such notions are heresy in the Imperium. To suggest that humanity's destiny might be bound to any alien race is to risk execution without trial. Yet, in the deep catacombs of Mars, beneath the singing forges where no prayer reaches, certain tech priests study fragments of Eldar circuitry with a reverence bordering on worship. They speak of design beyond comprehension, of harmonies between machine and soul. They claim, in whispers carried by cogitator hums and data spirits, that the Omnissiah's hand and the Eldar's art are not opposites, but reflections, that both were born from the same dream of dominion over chaos, and both have paid the same price. So the mirror stands, cracked but unbroken. The Eldar watch from the edges of reality, their visions clouded by the rising noise of human faith and fury. Humanity marches forward, believing itself guided only by divine providence, never seeing the faint trace of alien design that shadows its steps. Every war, every heresy, every resurgence of hope, all ripples in the same pond, stirred by fingers that cannot help but reach into what remains of the light. In the end, the truth is a paradox. The Eldar manipulate humanity not because they believe in its greatness, but because they cannot allow it to fail. For if humanity falls, the warp will claim all, and the last echoes of the Eldar will be swallowed by the same void that devoured their gods. Somewhere, deep in the echoing halls of a dying craft world, a farseer opens her eyes and whispers words no one will ever record. They are not prophecy nor command, but something closer to apology. Outside her window, human ships burn through the dark, bright as falling stars. She watches them vanish into the void and knows that this, too, is part of the design. And far below, on Terra itself, a scribe dreams of a mirror that shows two faces, one human, one Eldar, each fractured, each fading, yet bound by the same reflection. The manipulation is complete, though neither side will ever truly understand it. If you walk with us through this story, if you let your mind drift beyond the veil of the known, then lend your strength to the chorus. Share this chronicle, leave your mark, and keep the light of curiosity burning amid the darkness of the far future. For knowledge is a weapon, and in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, every weapon is sacred. There are moments in the galaxy when silence itself seems to think, when the void between stars hums not with emptiness, but with the pulse of hidden minds reaching across time. Among the countless craft worlds drifting through that silence, one stands apart, not for its splendor, but for the shadows that cling to its soul. Ulthwé, the black guardian of the Eldar race, the watchtower that gazes forever into the storm. Where other craft worlds turned inward to preserve what beauty they could from the ruin of their empire, Ulthwé turned outward, toward the warp's endless night, toward the eye of terror itself. It is said that the seers of Ulthwé were the first to understand that the Eldar's curse could not be escaped, only managed. They dwell upon the precipice between damnation and foresight, their every thought a struggle against the hunger of she who thirsts. While others sang to forgotten gods or drowned themselves in illusion, Ulthwé chose vigilance, an existence defined by the endless burden of knowing too much. And it is from this crucible of despair that their manipulation of humanity was born. To the Imperium, Ulthwé's name is legend and omen both. There are stories of ghost armies appearing from nowhere, of Eldar fleets that descend without warning upon chaos incursions, striking with terrifying precision only to vanish before the Imperial Navy can respond. Entire worlds have been saved by such interventions, though never without cost. For every life spared, there is another extinguished elsewhere. Every victory won through Ulthwé's interference is balanced upon a scale that only their farseers can read. To them, the salvation of one planet might justify the death of 10 others. And in their cold arithmetic, humanity remains both subject and instrument, a species too unpredictable to trust, yet too vital to abandon. Deep within the wraithbone spires of Ulthwé, beneath domes etched with psychic runes that pulse like living veins, the Council of Seers convenes. Here, the greatest minds of their people gather. Eldred Ulthrin, once among them, the most infamous of all farseers, whose name is spoken even among humans as both savior and deceiver. He was the architect of countless destinies, some glorious, some catastrophic, all inevitable. It was he who foresaw the coming of the Great Rift, who whispered warnings into human minds that could not comprehend the language of prophecy. It was he who dared to treat the Imperium not as a foe, but as a necessary pawn in the preservation of existence itself. But to understand Eldred's game is to understand Ulthwé's doctrine. They believe that the galaxy is not a stage for domination, but a collapsing equation, one that must be solved before all variables consume themselves in chaos. The humans, in all their brutal ignorance, are a force of entropy and creation alike. The Eldar cannot predict them, not completely. And so, Ulthwé watches them, studies them, nudges them, along lines of probability so fine that a single misstep could unravel millennia of effort. There are imperial records, forbidden, of course, that describe incidents where Ulthwé's presence coincided with moments of impossible imperial fortune. The defense of Medusa Fifth, the survival of Segmentum solar fleets during the 13th Black Crusade, even the strange preservation of Terra itself, during the darkest hours of the Cicatrix Maledictum's birth. Again and again, human triumph emerges from the brink of annihilation, guided by forces no one can explain, and always, somewhere beyond the edge of human sight, the black-and-bone craft of Ulthwé drift like silent sentinels. The Inquisition's savants have tried to categorize these patterns, to quantify the motives behind such interventions. Some argue that Ulthwé seeks to preserve the Emperor himself, believing the Golden Throne to be a stabilizing beacon against the Warp's growing madness. Others insist the Farseers merely protect their own, that humanity's survival is a convenient side effect of Ulthwé's defense of its craft world. Both theories may be true, both may be lies. For Ulthwé's strategy is built upon the paradox of concealment, to hide an act so vast that even those who benefit from it cannot perceive it. There exists a myth, whispered among rogue traders who have seen Ulthwé's fleets at the periphery of real space. They say that the craft world's infinity circuit hums with the voices of every Eldar who ever dared to question their fate. That each spirit stone within its hall sings not of triumph, but of regret. And in that chorus of the dead, the Farseers hear guidance, not commands from gods, but the echoes of failure warning them of what must not be repeated. If that is true, then Ulthwé's manipulation of humanity is not born of arrogance, but of mourning. A desperate attempt to rewrite a tragedy already endured once before. Eldrade himself once spoke, according to a translated data slate fragment recovered from an intercepted transmission, that the young race carries our fire now. If they fall, the stars will freeze. Whether he meant this as metaphor or prophecy is unknown, but it is certain that his hand shaped human destiny more than any living soul on Terra could fathom. From the guidance of Astartes' chapters during the Horus Heresy, to subtle influences upon the rise of imperial saints, his shadow stretches through history like the outline of a constellation, seen only when the light has gone. For all their aloofness, the seers of Ulthwé are not without emotion. They feel the weight of every manipulated fate, the guilt of every necessary death. Theirs is a burden humanity could not endure, the ability to see futures in which friends, lovers, entire civilizations must die so that something greater might survive. They are surgeons operating upon the corpse of time itself, excising infection at the cost of life. Humanity's ignorance, its blind faith in the Emperor's unseen will, spares it the torment of choice. But for Ulthwé, knowledge is damnation. Every prophecy fulfilled is another wound they must bear in silence. The true horror of Ulthwé's intervention lies not in their deceit, but in their compassion. They save humanity not out of love, but because they understand what it means to lose everything. And so, they stand at the edge of the Eye of Terror, guardians of a galaxy that will never thank them, sacrificing their own dwindling souls to preserve a race that might yet outlive them. But prophecy is never merciful. There are whispers that the threads of fate have begun to twist beyond even Ulthwé's comprehension, that the skein, once readable like a living map, now frays in directions unseen. Perhaps it is humanity's unpredictability that has done this. Perhaps it is something deeper, some cosmic entropy that not even the Farseers can mend. Whatever the cause, one truth remains. Ulthwé's long game is faltering, and when seers falter, destinies shatter. In the unending twilight that drapes Ulthwé, the infinity circuit hums like a memory that refuses to die. Souls flicker through its wraithbone corridors. Echoes of warriors, artisans, and lovers bound together in an eternal chorus of lament and wisdom. The living walk among these whispers as though among ancestors who never left, drawing counsel from voices that span millennia. To dwell upon Ulthwé is to live with ghosts, and to command them is to shoulder the unbearable gravity of foresight. For the Farseers, Prophecy is not a gift. It is the slow drowning of the self in knowledge that cannot be unlearned. Each vision begins as a tremor in the soul. The skein of fate unfolds not as a story, but as an orchestra of probabilities, each note demanding sacrifice. A farseer may glimpse 1,000 futures and know that all but one end in ruin. But to choose that single path often means condemning countless lives to secure it. Such is the calculus that governs Ulthwé's dealings with humanity. Every whispered warning, every phantom intervention is paid for in lives. Sometimes Eldar, sometimes human, sometimes both. Among the Council's most closely guarded secrets is the record of the convergence at Belisar Reach. It is said that when the demon legions of Khorne breached real space there, the Imperium's defenses were days from collapse. Yet, as the warp storm bled across the stars, a phantom fleet appeared, black and bone, its weapons bright as suns. Ulthwé's war hosts struck with surgical precision, shattering the demon vanguard and sealing the rift through psychic force alone. When the surviving Imperial commanders sought to thank their saviors, the Eldar were gone. All that remained were symbols carved into the scorched ground, a spiral of runes that, when later translated by the Adeptus Mechanicus, spelled the words "not yet." What did that mean? To the Inquisition it was mockery, a taunt from Xenos who saw themselves as arbiters of fate. But to those who knew the patterns, who had studied the Eldar's long manipulation of mankind, it was something else entirely. A statement of grim resolve. Not yet, not the end, not the fall, not the time for extinction. Ulthwé's seers had intervened not out of benevolence, but because the death of humanity at Belisar Reach would have triggered consequences even they could not endure. It was not the first time their unseen hand stayed the collapse of the Imperial might. During the 13th Black Crusade, when Abaddon's legions poured through the Cadian Gate, reports surfaced of Eldar forces fighting side by side with the Astra Militarum. The witnesses who spoke of it were silenced, yet those who fought there, those who saw the flash of shuriken rounds beside the blaze of lace guns, remembered the coordination too precise to be coincidence. Imperial artillery adjusted to cover Eldar flanks without command. Astartes' advance patterns mirrored Eldar's spearhead movements as though guided by the same unspoken rhythm. And when Cadia finally broke, it was the Eldar who ensured the evacuation of key human relics and commanders, guiding them to escape routes that should not have existed. They did not do so to preserve Imperial glory. They did it because those relics, those humans, were threads in futures yet to unfold. The great irony is that the Imperium will never acknowledge this. The Eldar's greatest acts of salvation are erased by Imperial decree, their compassion rebranded as deceit, their sacrifices as interference. And perhaps that is as Ulthwé intends. For to be seen is to invite reaction, and reaction is chaos. The manipulation only works when humanity believes it acts alone. There is a saying among Ulthwé's warlocks, one taught to initiates before they take their first steps into the path of the seer. The best blade is not the sharpest, but the one unseen until it is too late. The Eldar apply this not merely to war, but to destiny itself. They strike within moments so small they cannot be recorded, changing the course of history with gestures so subtle that even they sometimes forget where intervention ends and fate begins. Eldred Ulthrin embodied this philosophy more than any other. To humanity, he is myth, the alien trickster whose predictions saved and doomed them in equal measure. To the Eldar, he was a visionary burdened by knowledge so vast it drove him to rebellion against his own kind. There are tales that he once stood before the Phoenix Lords themselves and declared that the salvation of the galaxy lay not in isolation, but in alliance with the young race of man. He foresaw that humanity, for all its brutality, carried within it the capacity to endure what the Eldar could not. The corruption of the warp made flesh. When Ulthwé's council refused to listen, Eldrad acted alone. Through psychic subterfuge, he reached into human minds, generals, psychers, even saints, planting visions that would guide them without their awareness. The idea of divine inspiration, of miraculous instinct, is often nothing more than his hand moving invisibly through the skein. The burning faith of a preacher rallying the hopeless, the sudden clarity of a commander in the midst of despair, the inexplicable courage of a guardsman who stands when all others flee. These are the ripples of Eldrad's design. To the Imperium, they are miracles. To Ulthwé, they are maintenance, yet even the greatest Farseer cannot escape consequence. The deeper Eldrad wove himself into the fates of others, the thinner his own thread became. The last records of his presence, fragmented and apocryphal, tell of him standing before a gate of impossible light, torn between futures he could not reconcile. Some say he died there. Others whisper he transcended, becoming one with the skein itself. Whatever the truth, his legacy remains, 1,000 silent interventions that have kept humanity alive long enough to serve the Eldar's final purpose. And what purpose is that? The question haunts Ulthwé's halls like a curse. Some among their younger seers wonder whether the preservation of mankind has become a reflex rather than a design, a habit inherited from Eldrad's age, performed without understanding why. Others believe it to be a form of penance, an attempt to atone for the arrogance that once birthed Slaanesh. The oldest among them, however, whisper that humanity's persistence ensures something far greater, that the galaxy's final battle will not be fought between races, but between futures, one born of order, one of decay, one illuminated by the Astronomicon, the other by the laughter of dying stars. In that sense, Ulthwé's manipulation is not conquest, but curation. They do not seek to control mankind, only to preserve it long enough to face the inevitable, to ensure that when the end comes, and it will, the galaxy's last breath will not be silence, but defiance. The Black Guardians who patrol the perimeter of their craft world do so with quiet understanding. Every battle they fight in distant systems, every soul they lose to the warp's hunger, is an offering to the preservation of that fragile equilibrium. Their armor bears no glory marks, no sigils of pride, only the faint reflection of the void itself, black as morning glass. They know their duty, to fight unseen, to die unremembered, so that the young race may stumble a few steps further into a future none can predict. Still, in the solitude of meditation chambers, even the most disciplined Farseers confess to doubt. What if the humans are not saviors, but the architects of their second downfall? What if, by preserving mankind, Ulthwé ensures not deliverance, but another apocalypse? The skein shows no mercy, and the more they stare into it, the more it stares back. There is a chamber within Ulthwé known as the Hall of Silent Stars. It lies at the heart of the craft world, far beneath the wraithbone corridors and shimmering psychic fields that guard its outer shell. Few are permitted to enter it, not even all Farseers, for to gaze upon what rests there is to confront the full consequence of knowledge. The hall is lined with mirrors of psychic crystal, each one reflecting not the beholder's form, but fragments of possible futures. In those shifting reflections are visions of the galaxy unmade, stars imploding into warp storms, Terra reduced to ash, the eye of terror expanding until it devours reality itself. Here, Ulthwé's seers come to commune with despair, to study the fractures in the skein and calculate what small manipulations might delay the inevitable. Humanity appears again and again in those visions, sometimes as savior, sometimes as executioner, sometimes as both. The irony is cruel and perfect. The species the Eldar once viewed as primitive and brutish has become the key to their own survival. And though Ulthway's seers would never admit it aloud, there are moments when the mirrors show something even stranger. Flashes of human faces haloed in light, their features indistinct, their presence powerful enough to drive back the darkness. Whether these are omens of ascension or delusion, no one can say. It is in this hall that decisions are made, decisions that shape the destinies of trillions. When the Farseers debate intervention, they do not ask whether the action is moral. They ask whether it is necessary. A human world may burn today so that 10 others may see tomorrow. An imperial fleet may be sacrificed to draw chaos away from a psychic convergence. Each act is weighed not in lives, but in continuity. The Eldar are not sentimental. They are custodians of inevitability. And yet, beneath the surface of their cold logic, there is grief. Grief for what they once were, for the beauty of a civilization that sang to the stars and built wonders that no human mind can comprehend. Grief for the arrogance that birthed their fall. Grief even for humanity, whose path mirrors their own descent. Ulthway's seers see in mankind the same hunger, the same pride, the same blindness that once doomed their own empire. And perhaps it is this recognition, more than any prophecy, that drives them to intervene. They are not saving humanity from chaos. They are saving humanity from becoming them. There are rumors whispered among Eldar kindred that Ulthway's manipulation has gone too far. The Biel-Tan call them cowards, preservers of weakness. The Saim-Han call them deceivers who meddle with the natural death of the galaxy. Even the Harlequins, those enigmatic servants of the laughing god, have warned them that their obsession with control invites the very ruin they seek to prevent. Every hand upon the loom leaves a stain, one mask reportedly told the council. Yours will be blackest of all. Still, Ulthway endures. The craft world sails eternally, along the edge of the Eye of Terror, where the veil between reality and madness thins. They do not flee from it, they watch it. It is said that the Eye whispers to them, not in words, but in sensations. The taste of ash, the scent of blood, the echo of laughter too vast to be heard. Within that chaos lies the truth of all things. The Eldar know that Slaanesh waits for them, hungering for every soul that falters, and yet they stand at the brink, daring to manipulate the currents of destiny even as the abyss threatens to claim them. It is the purest act of defiance imaginable, and perhaps the most futile. For the skein is unraveling. The great rift has torn holes through time itself, and even Ulthway's mightiest Farseers struggle to predict the course of days to come. There are too many variables now, too many new actors upon the stage. The Primarchs have risen again. The Emperor stirs in his golden throne. New gods are whispered in the warp, and through it all, humanity grows, adapts, and mutates faster than any prophecy can contain. To beings who once saw centuries as single breaths, this unpredictability is both terror and awe. Some seers argue that the time has come to reveal themselves, to guide mankind openly, before ignorance seals both their fates. Others insist that to do so would break the fragile illusion that holds the Imperium together. If humanity were ever to know how many of its so-called miracles were born of Eldar hands, the backlash would ignite a war that even the stars could not contain. Thus, Ulthway remains unseen, their influence hidden behind the masks of fate and faith. They are the whisper in the Emperor's silence, the unseen architects of providence. In rare moments of stillness, when the craft world drifts between storms, the youngest of their number gather to listen to the oldest among them speak. One tale, passed down through generations, tells of a vision shared by an ancient Farseer in the final moments before her spirit joined the Infinity Circuit. She had seen a battlefield not yet born, a sky torn by fire, humanity and Eldar standing together against a tide of impossible darkness. And in that moment, she said, the skein had become clear again. For an instant, she whispered, I saw what it was all for. Then she was gone, her voice joining the endless hum of the dead. The young ones ask what she meant, but no one answers. Some think she glimpsed the end of all things. Others think she saw their salvation. Perhaps both are the same. The manipulation of humanity is no longer strategy. It has become faith, the last religion of a dying race. They pray not to gods, but to probability. They do not kneel before idols, but before equations of fate written in light and despair. Ulthwé has wagered the remains of its soul on the belief that one day mankind will awaken to its own potential, not as conquerors, but as stewards of balance. It is a dream as fragile as a spider's web in a storm. And yet they hold to it, for the alternative is unthinkable. Far from Ulthwé upon some nameless imperial world, a guardsman prays before battle. He asks the Emperor for strength, for courage, for purpose. Unseen, across a gulf of light years, a Farseer breathes his name into the skein, ensuring his survival by a single heartbeat. The guardsman will never know. The Farseer will never see him. But both acts, prayer and prophecy, echo the same truth, that even in the grim darkness of the far future, where hope is a heresy and mercy a weakness, the smallest choice can ripple across eternity. And so, Ulthwé continues its vigil, forever watching, forever weaving, forever haunted by the same unanswerable question that guides their every act. Is destiny shaped by the hand that moves it, or by the hand that refuses to let go? The black craft world sails on, a shadow against the edge of reality, carrying its burden of foresight and failure alike. And beneath its cold stars the skein trembles, not with fear, but with anticipation. Something is coming, something no prophecy can contain. The hands of Ulthwé tighten upon the threads, and somewhere, in the depths of the warp, something laughs. They say the webway hums with the memory of creation, that if one stands within its endless corridors of light and listens closely enough, one can hear the echoes of when the galaxy was young, when gods still walked and the Eldar had not yet damned themselves with their own perfection. The webway is not merely a passage, it is the scar tissue of the universe, a labyrinth woven from the bones of reality itself. It runs beneath all things, beneath Terra, beneath the stars, beneath the dreams of every living soul. And it is here, in this impossible architecture, that the destinies of Eldar and man intertwine most intimately. Few among humanity understand what the webway truly is. To the Mechanicus it is a relic, a network of Xenos void tunnels to be dissected, mapped, and replicated. To the Inquisition it is heresy made manifest, but to the Eldar it is sacred, a remnant of what they once were and what they can never be again. Every passage, every door, every shimmering corridor of impossible geometry carries their history, their pride, their sin. It is both sanctuary and prison, and at its heart lies the greatest wound ever inflicted upon existence. Long ago, when Slaanesh tore herself screaming into being, the shockwave shattered the webway. What had once been infinite and serene was broken, its paths collapsing, its guardians slain, its corridors flooded by the warp's corruption. In the aftermath, the surviving Eldar fled into what remained, sealing themselves behind psychic wards and wraithbone gates. Yet not all of the webway was theirs to claim. For deep within the shattered labyrinth, the Emperor of Mankind reached out, seeking to build a path of his own. This is the unspoken truth that binds humanity to the webway. The Golden Throne of Terra is not merely a machine of life and death, but a lock, a gate holding back a horror that neither race fully understands. When the Emperor first sought to guide his species toward unity, he turned his gaze upon the webway. He saw in its architecture the promise of salvation, a network untouched by the warp, a realm of pure stability where humanity could dwell free of chaos. And for a time, it worked. His greatest project, the Imperial Webway, began to take form beneath the surface of Terra, a gleaming corridor that might have delivered mankind into eternity unbound. But when the heresy came, and his sons turned against him, that golden path was shattered. The Emperor's body was broken, but his will endured. Now he sits upon the throne not as ruler, but as seal. Through his agony, he holds the warp at bay, preventing the webway breach beneath Terra from consuming the world. The Astronomicon burns as his beacon, but also as his prison light. Every day he endures, humanity remains safe upon its narrow ledge between salvation and damnation. Every day he falters, the webway stirs, and the Eldar watch. They have always watched, for within their craft worlds and hidden sanctuaries, their farseers know the truth. The Emperor's burden is not his alone. The tear within the webway, the wound of time, as the Harlequins name it, bleeds into all their futures. If it ever collapses, if the Emperor's psychic flame is extinguished, then the webway itself will fall. The sanctuaries of the Eldar will drown in the same tide that once destroyed their empire. The scourge would unravel utterly, leaving nothing but the laughter of the Dark Prince echoing through infinite void. And so, though no treaty exists, though no words are spoken, a fragile covenant persists between the two dying races. The Eldar, unseen, protect what the Emperor sustains. In ways imperceptible to human eyes, they mend fractures in the lattice of the webway, whispering stability into its wounded veins. Harlequin troops dance upon the edges of collapsing portals, their masks reflecting the light of forgotten stars, sealing rifts with rituals that are half art, half warfare. Craft world war hosts launch secret strikes against entities that should not exist, hunting demons within the hidden arteries of creation. All to ensure that the gate beneath Terra does not fail. To the Imperium, these battles are myths, dreams of the mad or the psyker-touched. The Adeptus Custodes, who guard the throne room itself, know fragments, enough to understand that their Emperor's agony is shared by unseen allies. There are reports, sealed beyond all classification, describing moments when the corridors beneath the palace flickered with strange lights, when whispers in alien tongues echoed through the psychic wards, when silhouettes of beings, not of man, moved like reflections across the mirrored halls. These are dismissed as hallucinations. Yet the custodians remember, and they pray, though they know not to whom. The webway's war is not one of armies, but of ideas. The corruption that seeps through its cracks is thought-given form, nightmare born of memory. Within its depths, time twists upon itself. A corridor may open to a battlefield that has not yet occurred, or to a world long turned to dust. The Eldar navigate this chaos as dancers in a storm, guided by instinct, by foresight, by fragments of songs their ancestors once sang when the stars were kind. Humanity, meanwhile, blunders through with brute will and unyielding faith, ignorant of how close it comes to annihilation with every step. And yet, perhaps because of that ignorance, humanity endures. This is what the Eldar cannot understand. For all their foresight, all their mastery, they are trapped by their own knowledge. They know too much of what will come, and too little of what could. Humanity, blind and burning, creates possibilities simply by refusing to see the limits of reality. To the Farseers, this is chaos. To the Harlequins, it is comedy. To Segorach, if he still laughs, it is the punchline of creation itself. Still, Ulthway's seers watch the webway's central fracture, that shimmering, howling wound beneath the throne, and they know that their fates are chained to a single man who no longer breathes. They send their agents, rangers, corsairs, and masked jesters, to patrol the edges of that silent war, to slay what crawls from its cracks. Some of these warriors die in shadows, their names never spoken again. Others live long enough to glimpse the Emperor's light bleeding through the warp storms like a wound that will not heal. For them, it is not faith they feel, it is kinship. For who better than the Eldar to understand a god who suffers eternally to atone for his creation's sins? The corridors of the webway are never silent for long. Beneath the smooth hum of psychic energy lies another sound, faint yet ceaseless. The whisper of distortion, the heartbeat of a dying labyrinth. The Eldar hear it in their dreams. Humanity feels it in the tremor of the Astronomicon. It is the same sound that haunts the soul of the galaxy itself, a reminder that the barrier between thought and nightmare is wearing thin. To walk the webway is to step outside of time. Even the Harlequins, those mad poets of fate, move through its corridors with reverence, their laughter echoing off walls that remember the first sunrise. The light here bends in impossible ways, painting the travelers' shadows before them, as if the webway knows their deaths and mourns them in advance. The walls are alive, woven from the psychic essence of the old ones and the will of generations of Eldar who shaped this dimension to their needs. But that ancient will falters now. There are cracks no Farseer dares to measure, fractures that bleed the color of madness. In one such place, a vast hollow known as the Vault of Shifting Suns, the Eldar wage a war that no mortal eye has ever seen. Here, demons born of the warp's hunger claw their way through the cracks, their bodies composed of sound and terror. Against them stand warriors clad in spirit armor, guided by the souls of their ancestors. Every clash of blade and talon sends ripples through the fabric of the webway itself. One misstep, one lapse in concentration, and the entire structure could collapse, erasing whole craft worlds in an instant. Yet they fight on, for to abandon this war would be to surrender not only themselves, but the Emperor as well. For though they will never admit it, the Eldar know that the Golden Throne's flame sustains them as surely as it imprisons him. The Emperor's agony radiates through the warp, creating a beacon so powerful that it holds chaos in check. Were that light to falter, the demons clawing at the webway's walls would no longer need to force their way through. They would pour. The eye of terror would widen, the stars would burn in reverse. There are those among the Eldar who have seen this future. They describe it not as apocalypse, but as a kind of unmaking, a return to the raw thought from which all things were born, a galaxy where meaning dissolves, where even the memory of what once was fades into hunger. The Farseers named this vision the second birth of Slaanesh, though in truth, it is the death of all that can dream. And so, paradoxically, the Eldar have become guardians of the very being whose rise once heralded their decline. The irony is bitter, yet inescapable. The Emperor's pain sustains the balance. His torment preserves the webway. The Eldar, who once cursed his ambition, now depend upon his endurance. It is a truth neither race can speak aloud, for it shatters the illusion that any of them are free. In the hidden temples of the Harlequins, where truths are spoken only through performance, there exists a play never shown to outsiders. Its name, in their tongue, translates to the wound that binds. In it, a god of light and a queen of shadow battle for eternity over a mirror that reflects not faces, but possibilities. Each time the god strikes, the mirror cracks further, and each time the queen bleeds, the cracks mend. The Harlequins say the god is the emperor, the queen is Isha, mother of the Eldar, and the mirror is the webway itself. The meaning is unclear, but the audience always leaves in silence. Meanwhile, the war continues. Deep within the corridors beneath Terra, the Custodes fight battles humanity will never know. They are the Emperor's angels, yet even their golden armor cannot shield them from what stirs in the dark. There are reports, buried so deeply within Imperial archives that even the Inquisition cannot access them, of custodians vanishing without trace. Entire cohorts lost to corridors that should not exist. Sometimes fragments of their armor reappear years later, covered in runes that glow faintly with Eldari script. The Mechanicus claims fabrication. The Ecclesiarchy declares it blasphemy. But to those who have seen the light flicker beneath the throne, the truth is clear. They were not lost. They were rescued. Eldar intervention within the webway is a dance of impossibilities. When the Imperial webway's defenses weaken, the Craftworld seers sense it immediately. They send their emissaries, unseen, intangible, shadows among shadows, to mend what human technology cannot. Often, they die doing so. Some are absorbed by the warp, their souls screaming into the void. Others are trapped between corridors of time, existing forever in the moment before sacrifice. The Infinity Circuits mourn them, but the Farseers record no grief. Their deaths are equations balanced. The Emperor endures another day. It is tempting, for those who seek meaning in all this, to imagine cooperation, a secret alliance between the Master of Mankind and the dying gods of the Eldar. But the truth is colder. There is no pact, no shared purpose, only mutual necessity. The Emperor holds back the tide, the Eldar patch the dam. Neither trusts the other. Both understand that the fall of one ensures the annihilation of the other. Still, there are legends, faint, forbidden, of a meeting long ago. It is said that before the heresy, before the throne was a tomb, a shadow of the Emperor once walked the webway. There he met a being draped in light that burned and sang, a Farseer of Ulthwé perhaps, or something older still. What words were spoken, none can say. Some claim they agreed to share the burden of the webway's stability, others that the Emperor swore to protect what remained of the Eldar until the end of time. Whether truth or myth, the echoes of that meeting linger. For even now, when the webway trembles, the psychic harmonics of both races pulse in tandem, two broken lights resonating through the dark. In the labyrinth between realities, there are moments when Eldar and Custodian cross paths, not as enemies but as ghosts of the same fate. Neither speaks, for words would shatter the fragile symmetry of that encounter. They simply pass, each acknowledging the other's burden. The Golden Warrior continues upward, toward the throne. The Eldar vanishes into the shadows, back toward the stars. Both understand, if only for an instant, that they are mirrors, two remnants of perfection, each sustaining a god who will never thank them. It is said that somewhere in the depths of the webway lies a chamber where time stands still, a place where the first tear still bleeds, and the last light of the universe already flickers. Both Eldar and human prophets have dreamt of it. Some call it the Nexus of Eternity. Others call it the Grave of Stars. Whatever its name, it is where the webway's final secret sleeps. The Farseers whisper that when that chamber is opened, all illusions will end, the Emperor's true nature revealed, the Eldar's final sin exposed. Until then, both races guard it, knowingly or not, like worshippers keeping vigil at the tomb of creation. No map can chart the webway in its entirety. It is not space as mortals know it, nor is it bound by the dimensions of time. To traverse it is to walk upon the skin of thought itself. The Eldar say the webway is alive, not as a creature, but as a memory that dreams of its makers. When they move through it, they feel the pulse of their ancestors beneath their feet, hear the sigh of worlds long gone in every gust of psychic wind. For humanity, the webway remains myth. For the Eldar, it is confession. Every corridor tells the story of their fall, every echo a reminder that perfection breeds its own executioner, and still they guard it even as it collapses around them. In one fragment of the labyrinth, a region known among the Harlequins as the Mirror's Edge, the fabric of the webway flickers between realities. There, the Harlequin masks perform the dance of the dying flame, a ritual meant to realign the corridors near the wound beneath Terra. To the uninitiated, it looks like madness, acrobats leaping between shards of unreality, laughter echoing against walls that scream. But within that chaos lies order. Each step, each flourish, resonates with psychic harmony. Through performance, they heal what cannot be rebuilt by will alone. Even the craft-worlders struggle to comprehend the Harlequin's devotion. Where Oathway calculates, the masks improvise. They do not predict, they play. The laughing god guides them, or so they believe, though whether his laughter is benevolent or cruel, no one can say. The Harlequins claim that the webway is the stage of existence, and every soul, mortal or divine, performs upon it. Humanity, they say, is the final act, the unplanned improvisation that could either save the play or end it forever. Their performances are messages in motion, prophecies written in gesture. When they appear before human eyes, rarely and only when the skein trembles, it is never accident. They are the heralds of imbalance. The webway shifts, and so they dance. It was one such mask that appeared on the world of Solace 9, a feudal planet whose sun was dying. The Imperial Guard had fortified it against a chaos incursion, but all communication ceased within hours of contact. Weeks later, when a Mechanica salvage fleet arrived, they found the surface scorched clean. No corpses, no machines. Only a single mural carved into the bedrock of the planet's capital. Figures of masked dancers surrounding a blinding light, their bodies dissolving into flame. The tech priests cataloged it as alien defacement and moved on. But the surviving psychic residue told another story, the faint hum of the webway stabilizing for the briefest moment before fading again. The Harlequins had sacrificed an entire world to close a breach that would have devoured a sector. Humanity would never know. The Emperor's light would shine another day. The Farseers of Ulthway, upon hearing this, fell silent. One among them, the youngest, unburdened by the arrogance of centuries, asked whether such sacrifices were worth it, whether the webway was truly worth preserving when it demanded so much blood. The elder seers gave no answer. Perhaps they did not have one. Perhaps they feared that even to ask was blasphemy. For if the webway collapses, it will not be only the Eldar who die. The Astronomicon itself will gutter and fade, its beacon extinguished. The Imperium will splinter into darkness. The warp will spill through reality unchecked. The galaxy will drown in madness. And so the Eldar persist in their impossible labor. Within the walls of Ulthway, artisans forge psychic keys that hum with the frequency of reality itself. Rangers traverse the outer passages of the webway, eliminating intrusions before they can reach the core. Spirit seers commune with the ghosts of ancient engineers whose souls are bound within the infinity circuits, seeking the forgotten geometries of repair. There are moments of triumph, corridors stabilized, routes reopened, warp breaches sealed. Yet for every victory, 10 new fractures appear. The webway is a body too ancient to heal. Its sickness is time itself. Meanwhile, the Emperor remains chained to his golden sarcophagus, the master of a flame that consumes him anew each day. His servants believe his suffering divine. The Eldar see it as the most terrible symmetry imaginable. Once, their own god, Isha, the mother of life, was imprisoned by Nurgle, condemned to eternal torment, kept alive by the same plague that killed her children. The Eldar pray to her still, though their prayers are whispers of guilt. Now they watch humanity worship a god who suffers in silence, and they see themselves reflected. The wound beneath Terra is not only physical. It is the mirror of the Eldar's own soul, a reminder that all creation is bound by the same cycle of sin and sacrifice. Some whisper that the Emperor's light within the webway is not merely psychic energy, but something older, a remnant of the same force that once gave birth to the Eldar gods. They say he is not alien to them, but kin. If that is true, then perhaps the entire history of both species has been one long echo, the gods reborn in mortal shells, doomed to repeat their cosmic tragedy across eons. Yet, even in this, the Eldar find a strange hope. If the Emperor is kin to their lost divinity, then perhaps redemption is possible. Perhaps pain can be transmuted into purpose. Perhaps the webway can yet become the path it was meant to be. Still, the wound bleeds, the Harlequins dance, the Custodes fight, the Eldar mend and mourn, and the humans, ever blind, march beneath the light of a beacon they do not understand. They call it faith. The Eldar call it survival. Both are right. In the deepest part of the webway, where sound dies and thought itself hesitates, lies a door of black wraithbone. It bears no rune, no name, no history. Even the Farseers fear it. They say it leads to the first chamber, the place where the Old Ones wove the lattice of the universe and whispered the first laws of creation. No one has opened it since the fall. But sometimes, when the webway trembles, a faint light seeps from beneath its frame, pulsing in rhythm with the Astronomicon. And somewhere, far above, on Terra, the Emperor's eyes flicker, if only for an instant. The Eldar do not speak of this. To do so would be to acknowledge what they all suspect, that the fates of both races are not parallel, but intertwined, two lines converging upon the same end. When the final seal breaks, when the last light of the webway fades, they will meet again. Not as masters or slaves, not as enemies or allies, but as the same desperate spark that refuses to die in the dark. Until then, the webway holds. Barely. If the webway is the body of the Eldar's fading dream, then Segurak is its pulse, the last heartbeat of their ancient divinity echoing through a dying people, the laughing god, the trickster, the eternal jester who outwitted Slaanesh and danced free while all other gods screamed into oblivion. Among the Eldar, he is both salvation and madness, truth and mockery entwined. His children, the Harlequins, are his messengers, his actors upon the stage of eternity. They do not build, they do not conquer, they perform. For to them, existence itself is a play, and every being within it a character bound by script, unaware of the audience that watches from beyond the veil. To the Imperium, the Harlequins are an enigma. Alien jesters who appear from nowhere, slaughter demons and heretics alike, and vanish without explanation. To the Eldar, they are something far more profound, the keepers of memory. In their performances, they preserve what remains of the Eldar's history, not as record, but as emotion. The tragedies of the fall, the arrogance of the ancients, the endless cycle of loss and defiance, all retold through dance and death. Their stages are battlefields, their audiences are the doomed. But among their many tales, one performance stands above all others: the mask of humanity. It is forbidden to most Eldar, performed only within the hidden theaters of the Black Library itself, the fortress of forbidden knowledge that drifts within the webway, guarded by Kegorak's chosen. In this mask, the Harlequins tell the story of the rise of man, of the Emperor's ascension, and of the strange, shared destiny that binds his kind to theirs. It is said that when the mask is performed in full, reality trembles, for within its movements lies a truth so profound that even gods might envy it. The play begins with laughter, a low, resonant sound that vibrates through the soul, like the hum of a dying star. From the darkness, a figure steps forward, the first mask, the embodiment of Segorak himself. His costume shimmers between gold and black, the colors of hope and void. He moves without moving, gliding across the stage as though time itself yields to his will. Then come the others, the masks of the lost, the doomed gods of the Eldar, each one represented by a dancer whose motion captures both majesty and decay. Isha weeps tears of light that turn to ashes as they fall. Kaini strikes the air, his every blow forming a new constellation before shattering it again. Asurian burns, silent and unseeing. And in the center, the laughing god smiles, watching his family devour itself in a ballet of ruin. Then, from the shadows, comes another figure. A new mask, uninvited, cloaked in radiant flame. The Harlequins call him the Silent King, though none believe he is meant to represent the Necron sovereign who bears that title. His mask bears no mouth, only eyes that blaze with impossible purpose. He raises a hand, and where it passes, the stage transforms, the ruined heavens giving way to a newborn galaxy of iron and prayer. The humans enter the play. They are portrayed not as villains or saviors, but as reflections, raw, flawed, defiant. Their faith becomes the counterpoint to the Eldar's fall. Where the Eldar sought pleasure and perfection, humanity seeks struggle and meaning. Their god, the figure of the Emperor, is not shown as divine, but as a man who dared to steal the fire of creation itself. He binds his people with light, just as the old ones once bound the Eldar, and as the Harlequins dance around him, Segorak watches with a smile that is not mockery but recognition. The mask turns darker. The Emperor ascends his throne. His light burns, but it is the light of agony. Around him, the warp stirs. The Harlequins mirror his suffering with movements so delicate that even demons weep. In their dance, Slaanesh is born again, not from Eldar excess, but from humanity's belief that suffering can redeem. The audience gasps. The laughing god laughs not in joy but in awe. They repeat us, his actor whispers, though no sound leaves his lips, and yet they make it new. The performance ends with a paradox. The laughing god removes his mask, revealing beneath it not a face, but a mirror. The Emperor's reflection stares back. They are the same. The crowd, whether Eldar or Harlequin or demon, must bow, for in that moment, all creation understands the joke. That the savior and the trickster are two sides of the same coin, spinning endlessly through the void. The Harlequins claim that this mask is not fiction, that Segorak himself watches humanity's rise as one might watch a new act of an eternal play. They say he takes delight in the Emperor's defiance, in humanity's stubborn refusal to break. For in their struggle, he sees a reflection of his own escape, the laughter that defied damnation. To the laughing god, humanity is not prey or rival. It is audience. It is muse. It is the next great story. Those few among the Eldar who have spoken with Harlequins after such performances describe the encounter as disorienting. The Harlequins speak in riddles, in lines that fold upon themselves. The joke was told once before, they say, but the punchline has changed. To them, history is not linear but cyclical. a spiral of repetition and reinvention. Where the Farseers see inevitability, the Harlequins see possibility. That is why they alone among the Eldar still laugh. Not because they have forgotten despair, but because they have mastered it. Their laughter is not mockery, it is rebellion. And within that laughter lies their manipulation of humanity, subtle as a stage whisper. When they appear before Imperial forces, it is never without purpose. Sometimes they fight alongside the Inquisition, striking down demonic threats that even the Ordo Malleus cannot contain. Sometimes they ambush Imperial convoys, killing without explanation, only for those same deaths to later prevent catastrophe. They are chaos in form, but pattern in function. Their jesters' masks hide the same kind of foresight that drives Ulthwé, but tempered by joy, by acceptance. The Harlequins do not seek to save humanity, they seek to teach it, to remind the young race that even in the face of despair, there must be laughter, not the cruel laughter of mockery, but the transcendent laughter that denies the victory of fear. For that is Segarak's gift and his curse, to see the universe as tragedy and comedy both, and to understand that they are the same. To understand the Harlequins is to abandon the notion of reason. Their movements, their speech, their very existence seem to follow no order discernible to the human or Eldar mind. They appear where they should not, defy death as if it were an illusion, and vanish in laughter that echoes through the psychic void long after they are gone. Yet behind that chaos lies design, intricate, deliberate, woven through with purpose older than empires. For the laughing god does not deal in accidents. His jesters perform with precision, so perfect it masquerades as madness. The Black Library, their sanctuary and their stage, rests deep within the webway, a fortress of knowledge, pulsing with secrets that could unmake the galaxy. Every book, every crystalline data shard within it hums with forbidden wisdom. Records of chaos, lost histories of the old ones, prophecies that describe not futures, but possibilities. It is said that the library is alive, that it selects who may enter and who must be unmade for even trying. Only the Harlequins walk freely through its halls. To others, even Eldar of noble craft worlds, it is a death sentence merely to gaze upon its gates. Yet humanity has brushed against it more than once. There are whispers, buried in the vaults of the Inquisition, of imperial psychers and rogue scholars who claim to have glimpsed a vast labyrinth of light and shadow during near-death experiences, a place of knowledge guarded by dancers of living color. They spoke of voices that mocked them, yet also pitied them, and of hands that gently guided them away from the threshold before their minds could shatter. These encounters, if true, were no coincidence. The laughing god watches humanity's flirtation with forbidden knowledge, as one might watch a child reaching for fire, amused but alert. For all his jesting, Segarak remembers the fall. He remembers the birth cry of Slaanesh, the endless feast of souls that followed, the annihilation of his kin. He knows what curiosity unchecked by wisdom can create. Thus, when humanity's hunger for power mirrors that of the ancient Eldar, the Harlequins intervene, not as saviors but as teachers. Their lessons are cruel but never without purpose. There is a tale, half myth, half memory, of the mask of the blinded prophet. It is said that during the time of the Great Crusade, when the Imperium was still young, a Harlequin troop appeared unannounced upon the bridge of an Imperial flagship as it prepared for battle. They danced silently around the Primarch who commanded it. Some say it was Fulgrim, others say it was Lorgar, their movements mirroring the unfolding of his thoughts. When the Primarch demanded they explain themselves, the Harlequins spoke as one. "You will build a god and then be consumed by it. You will sing praises to your reflection until it devours your song. Then they laughed, a sound like breaking glass, and vanished. The meaning was lost on the Primarch, but not on the Harlequins, for they saw what none else could, that humanity's destiny was to repeat the cycle of divine hubris, that the Emperor's dream of perfection would birth its own shadow, that chaos, denied through strength, would return through belief. They could not prevent it, but they could prepare the stage. It is this, perhaps more than any act of war, that defines the Harlequins' manipulation. They move not to change outcomes, but to frame them. They arrange the pieces, guide the timing, ensure that when catastrophe comes, and it always comes, it arrives in the shape most likely to inspire growth rather than despair. To them, suffering is not an end, but a motif, and every death a gesture in an infinite choreography. When they appear to humanity, their manner is as inconsistent as the warp itself. Sometimes they slaughter, sometimes they save. An inquisitorial strike team might find its demon quarry already slain, their weapons laid neatly beside bodies pierced with monomolecular blades. A chaos cult might awaken to discover its members arranged in a circle, their flesh carved into sigils that form a laughing mask visible only from orbit. A saint might dream of a jester who whispers a secret, a phrase that turns the tide of war. In all these acts, there is no malice, only intent, to remind the galaxy that the play continues, and that no one, not even gods, controls the script entirely. The Harlequins' understanding of humanity is almost affectionate. They see in mankind the spark of improvisation that even the Eldar lost. To the Harlequins, humanity is art without awareness, a tragic poem that writes itself in blood and hope. They admire the Emperor's audacity, even if they pity his ignorance. Some even claim that Segorak laughs in genuine delight when he hears human prayers, for they are filled with contradiction, fear and courage, faith and doubt, despair and ecstasy. To him, that is beauty. It is balance through imbalance, the one harmony that even the gods cannot compose. Within the Black Library, there exists a single sealed tome known only as the Mirror Jest. No Harlequin has ever performed it in full, for it is said to tell the end of the story, the final act of the universe. Its opening line is inscribed in both Eldar runes and High Gothic. The god who laughs and the god who burns shall meet at the end of all things. Scholars among the Harlequins debate its meaning endlessly. Some believe it speaks of Segorak and the Emperor, the trickster and the martyr, destined to face each other when the last light fades. Others think it describes humanity itself, that one day man will ascend to godhood, not through conquest, but through irony. There are hints that the Harlequins have already seen this final act, or something like it. They speak sometimes of the curtain call, an event they alone await. When asked what it is, they only smile and say, "When all lies are revealed," and the audience learns it was the stage that was laughing all along. It is said that on that day the masks will fall, the play will end, and Segorak will finally bow, not to chaos but to truth. Until then, his jesters play their roles. They move unseen through imperial dreams, shaping destinies and gestures no mortal will ever recognize. They plant laughter where there should be none, hope where there should be despair, and madness where there should be certainty. And in doing so, they preserve the delicate balance between tragedy and redemption, between the Emperor's agony and the galaxy's endless dance toward entropy. To those who glimpse them, the Harlequins are nightmare incarnate. To those who understand them, they are the last guardians of meaning. For in their laughter lies the memory of everything the galaxy has lost, and perhaps the promise that even in ruin, beauty endures. There's a story whispered in the Black Library, a story the Harlequins never tell in full, for it has no ending. They call it the Jest of Mirrors. It begins, as all their stories do, with laughter. But this laughter is quiet, mournful, the kind that precedes revelation. It tells of a universe in which every god and mortal, every star and soul, is merely a reflection of another. It tells of a stage so vast that even eternity is too small to hold it. And it tells of a mask, the final mask, behind which there is no face at all. The Harlequins say the mask belongs to Segorach, and to the Emperor, and to every being who has ever tried to outwit fate. It is the mask of the storyteller who realizes the tale was never his to tell. For that is the truth the laughing god both fears and cherishes, that his laughter echoes only because the universe refuses to listen. Yet still he laughs, because silence would be surrender. To watch a Harlequin performance is to glimpse that truth for an instant. Their movements transcend time. Their colors shift with impossible emotion. Their blades sing of destiny undone. A human observer would see chaos, a fevered dream of violence and grace. But to the Eldar, each step is scripture, each spin a syllable in a language older than thought. The Harlequins are priests and prophets both, and through them, Segorach communes, not with his own kind, but with the entire galaxy. Sometimes that communion takes form in the most unlikely places. There was once a battle upon the shrine world of Maladrex, where the Imperial Creed had endured 10,000 years without a whisper of doubt. When the demon incursion came, the Ecclesiarchy declared it divine testing. The faithful stood and died by the millions. And then, in the 21st hour of the siege, the skies split with light. From the heavens descended not angels but jesters, dancers clad in Harlequin motley, their footsteps leaving trails of shimmering air. They moved through the daemons as if through dust, every slash of their blades a note in some unseen melody. Within minutes, the warp storm collapsed. The survivors, those few who did not flee or lose their minds, claimed they heard laughter rolling across the battlefield, vast and sorrowful, like thunder from an empty sky. When the Inquisition came to purge the world, they found a single inscription carved into the stone of the destroyed cathedral. Faith is the mask that saves the fool. They called it heresy. The Harlequins called it art. Not all who meet them survive. Many are driven mad, broken by visions of their own reflections, speaking truths they were never meant to hear. Others are spared, marked instead by fragments of color that never fade from their flesh, as if stained by the echo of a joke they cannot recall. There are Inquisitors who bear such marks, though they hide them beneath armor and prayer, terrified that the laughter might one day return. It is not mockery that drives the Harlequins to these extremes, but devotion, a devotion deeper than faith. For theirs is not belief in what is, but in what could be. They alone among the Eldar embrace the chaos that destroyed their kin. They dance upon the knife edge of annihilation and call it grace. Where Ulthwé watches, where Bieltan mourns, where Iandan prays, the Harlequins laugh. They laugh because laughter is the last weapon the gods cannot corrupt. They laugh because to despair would be to accept the script that Slaanesh wrote for them. And yet, even the laughing god cannot escape irony. His jesters are not merely actors, they are heralds. For every dance performed, every story retold, draws the galaxy closer to its conclusion. Whether he intends it or not, Segorach is writing the final act. There are prophecies within the Black Library that speak of the great curtain fall, a moment when the warp and the material shall merge, when the walls between dream and flesh shall crumble. In that hour, it is said, the laughing god will confront the Emperor upon the stage of the dying webway. Their dialogue will last only a moment, but in that moment, all truth will be revealed. Some claim they will unite, two divine fragments made whole. Others say one will consume the other, and the universe will end in laughter or flame. The Harlequins never say which. Perhaps they do not know. And humanity, poor, tragic, magnificent humanity, is the audience for this grand performance. The Harlequins move through its history like unseen playwrights, ensuring that when the curtain falls, mankind will have learned how to laugh in the face of the void. Not mock laughter, not madness, but the laughter that defies despair, that transforms suffering into art. For Sagorak's final lesson is simple. The universe cannot be saved, only understood. The Harlequins' manipulation of humanity, then, is not coercion but education. They do not guide as Ulthwé guides, nor protect as Iyanden protects. They provoke, they wound, they inspire. They ensure that humanity's evolution, painful though it may be, will be forged in awareness rather than ignorance. Every saint who finds beauty in pain, every artist who paints the apocalypse and calls it divine, every martyr who smiles before the blade, all play their parts in the laughing god's theater. Sometimes, on quiet nights aboard drifting craft worlds, Eldar who have lost everything hear faint laughter echoing through the infinity circuits. It is not cruel, it is not mocking, it is the sound of survival itself, the echo of Sagorak reminding them that while there is performance, there is purpose, that the play continues. The Harlequins vanish as they came, leaving only silence in their wake. Yet that silence is never empty. It hums with potential, like the pause between heartbeats before a revelation. For the laughing god's influence is never direct. It lingers in the mind, twisting sorrow into understanding, fear into motion. There are those among the Eldar who whisper that even now, Sagorak prepares his final jest, one that will bind all races, all gods, all souls, in a single act of revelation. Perhaps the Emperor is part of it. Perhaps he is the punchline, or perhaps the joke is older still, written in the pulse of creation itself. Whatever the truth, one cannot deny the echo that moves unseen through every battle, every prayer, every laugh that dares rise against despair. For in the end, the galaxy is his stage, and all who live within it, Eldar, human, demon, god, wear his masks. In the dark heart of the galaxy, beyond the last reach of the Astronomicon, where the light of humanity falters and the ancient songs of the Eldar fade to silence, the stars themselves seem to mourn. Here, the void is not empty, it is waiting. Waiting for the last act, the final move in a game that began before either race knew what gods were. The Eldar call this region the Veil of Lost Purpose, though humans have other names for it. The Halo Stars, the Dark Halo, the Graveyard of Meaning. It is where time slows, where the warp whispers truths too vast to bear, and where all fates, no matter how divergent, eventually converge. This is where the Eldar's manipulation of humanity finds its answer, not in conquest or alliance, but in the cold arithmetic of survival. For all their centuries of foresight, their infinite dances and prophecies, the Eldar understand one truth above all others. The galaxy will not endure. Not as it is, not as they wish it to be. The threads of fate grow thin, fraying faster with each century. The webway trembles, the Emperor decays, chaos stirs, and so the Eldar play their longest game, not to win, but to ensure that when the end comes, it comes well. Among the Farseers of Ulthwé, this game is known as the Quiet Convergence. It is no plan, no grand alliance written in star charts, but a philosophy of inevitability. They cannot prevent extinction, theirs or humanity's, but they can sculpt its meaning. To die as architects, not as victims. To leave behind not ruins, but echoes that will sing long after flesh and metal have turned to dust. In this way, they wage the only war they still believe in, the war for legacy. The manipulation of mankind was never an act of dominance. It was preservation of both species and of memory itself. Humanity, though crude and reckless, carries within it something the Eldar lost long ago: the will to exist without understanding why, to act, to fight, to love, to believe, even in the face of meaninglessness. To the Eldar, that is divinity. That is what Slaanesh could never consume. And so they nurture it in secret, like a candle in an endless night. The far-seers have seen what lies beyond extinction. In their meditations, they drift through the psychic ruins of possible futures, where the stars are cold and the warp has devoured itself. In some visions there is nothing. In others, something new, a flicker of light that is not warp or matter, but something born of both. A third song, faint but defiant. They believe that song to be the legacy of what they now shape. A harmony between races, never realized in life but preserved in death. There is a legend whispered among them, the prophecy of the final shadow. It speaks of a moment, far beyond reckoning, when the Emperor's flame will falter and the Astronomicon will die. The Imperium will shatter, and chaos will drown the void in laughter. Yet, in that hour, a voice, neither human nor Eldar, will rise, from the ruins of both. The prophecy says the voice will speak a word that ends the war in heaven forever. A word not of command, but of understanding. No one knows its meaning. Some say it is a new name for the Emperor. Others say it is Segorak's final jest. A few whisper that it is the voice of the galaxy itself, finally awakening. Until that day, both races move toward the same horizon, blind to the symmetry that binds them. Humanity builds empires of faith. The Eldar weave empires of foresight. Humanity believes it is guided by the Emperor's light. The Eldar know that light is held aloft by their unseen hands. Humanity fears extinction. The Eldar have already embraced it. And yet both persist, driven by the same unspoken truth, that even the smallest act of defiance against oblivion has meaning. In the quiet halls of Craftworld Ulthwé, beneath the cold gaze of their infinity circuit, the oldest of the Farseers meditate upon the skein. They see humanity's wars, its betrayals, its miracles. They see the rise of new gods from the ashes of old. They see the Emperor's light dimming, but not dying. They see laughter in the void and tears upon the stars, and they understand what perhaps no one else can, that the universe is not ending, it is transforming. What comes after cannot be foreseen, for it is not written. That is why the Eldar have chosen humanity as their final gamble. For all their knowledge, they have learned this one truth too late, that certainty is the first step toward damnation. Humanity's ignorance, its chaos, its boundless potential, these are not flaws. They are freedom. The Eldar, who once thought themselves gods, now serve as midwives to the birth of a species that may one day become what they were meant to be. They do not love humanity. They do not trust it. But they believe in it, in the same way one believes in the inevitability of dawn, even after the longest night. Far away, beyond Ulthwé, within the webway's deepest fractures, Harlequin troops perform their final rehearsals. Their laughter echoes across the dying corridors of reality, mocking the silence that creeps ever closer. Each performance is a ritual of remembrance, a promise that when the stars fade, the story will not. For stories are what gods fear most. They end only when no one remembers to tell them. The laughing god watches from between realities, his smile as wide as the void. Perhaps he knows how it ends. Perhaps not. Perhaps the joke was never about winning, but about playing. The Emperor burns still, his agony radiating through the warp like a heartbeat that refuses to stop. Somewhere in that agony, perhaps, there is laughter. Perhaps he too understands now. In the end, the game is not between gods and mortals, but between despair and meaning. And though the Eldar are fading, though their craft worlds drift like tombs through the black, their purpose endures, to ensure that when the last light flickers, someone, somewhere, will still be able to see. The oldest souls of the Eldar say that extinction is not death, but punctuation, the breath drawn between the end of one sentence and the beginning of another. In the vast architecture of existence, even gods are syllables. The universe writes and rewrites itself endlessly, and every race, no matter how radiant, is merely ink that dries and fades. The Eldar once raged against this truth. They built empires to defy it, gods to command it, songs to drown it out. But now, in the twilight of their kind, they accept it as the only constant. They do not fight to avoid extinction anymore. They fight to author it. The Farseers of Ulthwé have seen the long collapse, not in visions of doom, but in ripples. Each century another page turned in a book that cannot be closed. They see craft worlds drifting apart, their psychic threads thinning like cobwebs in wind. They see their own infinity circuits dimming, their stored souls whispering more faintly with each passing millennium. And yet, in the midst of this decline, they see movement, humanity rising, consuming, evolving in ways that defy all probability. It is not wisdom that keeps the species alive. It is hunger, instinct, the refusal to die quietly. To the Eldar, this is blasphemy and beauty intertwined. They envy it, for it is the one art they never mastered, the ability to endure without understanding. That is why they whisper into human dreams, guide their wars, shape their myths. Not to enslave, but to teach, to remind humanity that despair can be sculpted into purpose, as the Eldar once sculpted light into cities that sang. If humanity can inherit even that fragment of transcendence, that final act of creation born of suffering, then perhaps something greater than either race will endure when the last star dies. On Craftworld Iyanden, where ghosts outnumber the living, spirit seers commune with the dead not in lament, but in curiosity. They ask what the afterlife has shown them. Some souls answer that the warp is nothing but reflection, that every thought becomes its own eternity, looping endlessly until it learns its lesson. Others say there is a place beyond even the warp, where light has weight and sound becomes matter. The Eldar call it the deep loom, a realm outside fate. Perhaps it is myth. Perhaps it is where extinction leads. It is in pursuit of this mystery that the Eldar have tied their destiny to humanity's. For humanity, in its blind chaos, has begun to tear holes in the structure of the warp, not through sorcery, but through belief. The faith of trillions, the prayers of the dying, the desperate songs of those who fight and fall, all of it burns like a psychic storm. The Eldar feel its tremors in their meditations. It is not the energy of despair, it is something stranger, something creative. It shapes the warp as the old ones once did, not by domination but by sheer persistence. Humanity is rebuilding reality, one act of madness at a time. This terrifies the Eldar, for it mirrors their past. Yet it also awes them, because it means the cycle might continue, not as repetition but as rebirth. Humanity's rise may be the galaxy's next genesis, but only if they are guided, tempered, shown how to wield their power without succumbing to the same ecstasy that doomed the Eldar. That is the purpose behind the manipulation. The reason Ulthwé interferes and the Harlequins jest. They are not puppeteers. They are gardeners. They prune, they poison, they nurture, not out of malice, but because they remember what happens when the garden grows wild. In the cold light of their dying suns, the Eldar craft prophecies not to predict, but to warn. The most sacred among these is the chorus of dust, a vision sung rather than spoken. It tells of the moment when the last Eldar soul will leave the material realm, joining the infinite hum of the infinity circuits. In that instant, humanity will stand alone. But instead of falling to darkness, they will look into the void and smile. They will build something new, something the Eldar could never imagine. A civilization not of control, but of acceptance. It will be fleeting, fragile, but perfect in its impermanence. And from its ashes, the galaxy will finally rest. Some Farseers call this heresy. To glorify humanity is to accept irrelevance. But others, those who remember Eldrad's rebellion, who remember the first warnings ignored, see it as penance. The Eldar do not wish to be remembered as gods or demons, but as teachers. If their extinction gives birth to a race that can do what they could not, then perhaps their fall was never tragedy, but transformation. There are quiet rumors, impossible, blasphemous, that the Emperor himself knows this. That within the endless agony of his entrapment, he sees what the Eldar see. That he understands his throne not as prison but as cocoon. The light of the Astronomicon, fading though it may be, is not death. It is gestation. And the day it goes out will not be the end but the moment of emergence. Whether he rises as god or ghost, no one can say. Perhaps he will be reborn not as one being, but as countless, his essence diffused among his children, just as Isha once scattered her mercy among her worshippers. Perhaps he already has. The galaxy's psychers, those tormented conduits of the warp, are not merely mutations, they are glimpses of evolution. The next step, the bridge between what was and what will be. The Eldar watch this transformation with both dread and devotion. In humanity's chaos, they see their own genesis reflected, a storm of creation and destruction intertwined. They understand now that the universe does not evolve by design, but by error. Every perfection is followed by collapse, and every collapse gives birth to a new song. That is the long game. Not to win, but to endure the rhythm. In the dimmed halls of Ulthwé, beneath murals painted with starlight and shadow, the Farseers whisper a prayer to a god they no longer believe in. Not to Aisha, not to Asurian, not even to the Emperor. They pray to failure. For in failure lies change, and in change lies continuation. It is the most sacred heresy of all, to bless one's own extinction. When a dying star collapses, it screams in silence. The light that once nourished worlds turns inward, folding upon itself until it becomes something no longer light, no longer life, a singularity, a wound that remembers what it was. The Eldar see themselves in that silence. They feel it in their bones, in their wraithbone cities, in the fading hum of their infinity circuits. Every craft world drifts toward that inevitable gravity, their songs dimming, their souls pulled inward toward the dark. And yet, even as they fall, they reach outward. They reach toward humanity, toward the flickering fires of a younger race still too stubborn to despair. The long game is not played in victories. It is played in moments, small, invisible, unrecorded. A guardsman who chooses mercy instead of rage. A Magos who questions his own code. A child born with eyes that see through time. None of them know their actions matter, but to the Eldar watching from their hidden orbits, they are the proof that the flame still moves. Humanity's story is one of blind miracles, and the Eldar have learned to nurture them without claiming them. To plant ideas like seeds in soil that will never know their names. It is said that once, on the edge of the halo stars, an Ulthwé seer met with a lone human psyker. Neither spoke, for words could not bridge what they were. Instead, they shared visions, the seer showing the slow death of her people, the human showing the burning chaos of his mind. when they parted, both wept. For the seer had glimpsed in him something terrifying, hope without reason, and the psyker had seen in her something divine, wisdom without mercy. That meeting was never recorded, but it lives within the skein, replayed endlessly in the currents of fate, the perfect symmetry of the dying and the becoming. In the aeons to come, if aeons still exist, the memory of the Eldar will fade from human tongues. Their names will become myth, their craft worlds reduced to ruins that orbit suns long extinguished. Perhaps the humans who find them will mistake them for gods or ghosts or the echoes of dreams. Perhaps they will feel nothing at all. But somewhere, hidden deep in their genetic memory, the whisper of the Eldar will remain, the instinct to look upward, to question, to mourn, and to create. That will be the legacy of their manipulation, not servitude, but inheritance. Among the Harlequins there is a legend that in the final age of the galaxy, when even the warp begins to starve, the last performance will be held upon the bones of the universe itself. The laughing god will take the stage once more, his mask cracked, his voice low. He will call forth every soul that ever was, Eldar, human, demon, god, and they will dance one final dance, their movements forming a pattern so vast that it becomes creation anew. When the dance ends, there will be silence, and in that silence the first heartbeat of the next cosmos will sound. The Harlequins call it the jest eternal. The Farseers call it the renewal. The humans will one day call it the dawn. Perhaps that is why the Emperor still endures. Perhaps his silence is not absence, but patience. The throne is not his tomb, but his cocoon. The Eldar whisper that his apotheosis, should it ever come, will not be conquest, but surrender. That he will rise not as the master of mankind, but as its servant. That he will unmake the Imperium with the same hands that built it, and in doing so, free humanity from the cycle of worship and war. The Harlequins laugh when they speak of it, but their laughter trembles with something like awe. For if the Emperor ascends, and if humanity transcends the warp through him, then perhaps the Eldar's extinction will not be in vain. Perhaps they were not the end of beauty, but its beginning, the prototype of consciousness learning to bear its own reflection. Their arrogance, their sorrow, their endless striving, all necessary prelude to the song that humanity now writes in blood and light. In this way, the Eldar's fall becomes a gift, and their manipulation a benediction. But not all among them accept this peace. There are still those who rage against inevitability, exodite seers who curse the skein, corsairs who burn worlds to defy prophecy, ancient autarchs who dream of rebuilding the empire that was. They cannot bear the thought that their legacy might be to vanish, that their power might exist only to kindle another's flame. Yet even their defiance serves the pattern. Every act of rebellion, every spark of pride, feeds the fire that will one day light the void anew. The gods, it seems, do not choose their instruments. The play writes itself, and so the galaxy drifts on. The Imperium fights its eternal wars, blind to the strings that guide it. The Eldar fade into legend, their craft worlds gliding silently through the dying dark. The Harlequins dance upon the bones of time, weaving endings into beginnings. And somewhere, beyond all reckoning, the laughing god still chuckles in the dark, his laughter the pulse of creation refusing to end. There will come a day when even the Astronomican's light flickers and fails, when Terra is dust and the webway collapses into silence, when the last Eldar spirit song fades into the hum of forgotten memory, and in that instant perhaps a single human, alone upon some nameless rock beneath a dying sun, will look upward and understand. Not the Emperor, not the gods, not the meaning of it all, but the sheer, impossible beauty of having existed at all. That understanding will ripple through what remains of reality like a breath, and from that breath, perhaps, something new will begin, for that is the long game. Not to survive, not to win, but to leave behind a universe capable of remembering why it tried. The Eldar's manipulation of humanity will never be recorded, never celebrated, never even known. It was never meant to be. It was a kindness too vast to name. A final act of faith from a dying species to a rising one. And when the curtain finally falls, when the last laughter fades, their memory will linger not in monuments, but in the unspoken grace of every being that dares to reach beyond its limits. The stage will darken, the audience will dissolve, and somewhere, in the silence after the end, a sound, faint, familiar, will echo once more. Laughter, not mockery, not madness, but the laughter of those who for one shining moment in eternity understood the joke.